We're on. We're filming.
Does this mean I start now?
That means you guys are supposed to start, yes.
So our excerpt takes place in scene 6, line 43 to 85. This passage is interesting enough, even though it's still early on in the play, because readers are still trying to figure out who the characters are. In this passage, we see Edmund's great manipulation skill that echoes to one of the greatest Shakespearean manipulators, Iago from Othello. Our passage presents a dialogue between Edmund the bastard and Gloucester, his father. This passage is the second step in Edmund's more elaborate plan to his quest for power. The first step was when he planted the letter for Gloucester to find, which raised suspicions, and now he's taking action towards the destruction of Edgar's image. That's what we will analyze in that passage, as well as how Shakespeare used diction and irony to present this scheme. Now, let's start with diction. We need to understand that every word choice is important, especially for Edmund. If you'd follow me to page 147, line 46, 47, Edmund says, "Spoke with how manifold and strong a bond the child was bound to the father." In these two lines, Edmund uses specific word choice to sacralize the bond between father and child. He does so to express the importance the bond, the importance the bond holds, and the respect it should be given. Keep in mind that later on, he will manage to show how Edgar betrayed that bond. If we go further in that same speech to page 148, line 55, we see that Edmund takes an important break in his speech. Taking a pause, a break in your speech dictates the rhythm of that same speech. Edmund is trying to look believable, surprised, and on his nerve that his brother just trying to end his life. And that pause or break just amplifies the plausibility and the power of that act, because once again, keep in mind that for Edmund, this is just an act. Readers should get from this first paragraph that Edmund is glorifying the bond between father and child. He's showing how he's developing a good bond with his father, whereas Edgar's beginning to have a bad one. This shows the reader that Edmund is not only a manipulator, but he's clever also. He's diminishing Edgar's image, not by insulting him directly, but by showing the value of a good father and child relationship. He managed to make a father reject his own child, and we see that rejection is an important theme in that novel.
Yes, we see that this theme is very recurrent in the novel. More specifically, in scene 1, we can see a parallel can be made between Gloucester's rejection of Edgar and Lear's rejection of Cordelia. This puts forward the similarities between the two unhappy families, and also Edgar and Cordelia are both good children of fathers who rejected them but decided to love the other children that do not love them back. More specifically, we can go to page 149 on the line 79. We see Gloucester saying, "I never got him." He's stating that he's talking about Edgar here, and he's stating that he never fathered Edgar, and by doing so, he's disowning him as Lear did with Cordelia. Now, not only is diction used to portray Shakespeare's purpose, but irony as well. We can see this in the passage on 148 and 149 on lines 64 to 77, where we find Edmund telling Gloucester what Edgar allegedly told him during their talk. We feel that there is a great deal of irony in Edmund's description to his father of the ways in which Edgar has allegedly schemed against Gloucester. Edmund's clever scheming to get rid of Edgar shows his cunning spirit and his immorality. He's twisting others to get to serve his own ends. Edmund goes so far as to say that Edgar told him that no one would ever believe Edmund's word, because he is a bastard. But in this situation, what is ironic is that Edmund uses something that is supposed to be negative, his bastard status, to get to benefic in this situation. More specifically, with this remark, Edmund not only calls attention to his bastard status, but proves crafty enough to use it to his advantage. This use of irony shows just how cunning Edmund is. He is using his own status against his brother. He's creating a sense of pity towards himself. That way his father can empathize with him, and in this way, when his father feels bad for him, he could inherit all his riches. This shows the reader the extent Edmund is willing to go to get what he wants. This use of irony further accentuates his immorality in the eyes of the reader.
So long we focus a lot on Edmund, but this passage doesn't only revolve around him. We also get a sense of irony from Gloucester, but that kind of irony expresses a bigger duality in the novel, the one of natural and natural. If you'd follow me to page 149, line 84, 85, the last two lines, Gloucester says, "Loyal natural boy, I work the means to make thee capable." At the end, we see that Gloucester called Edmund his natural boy. This line in itself is an oxymoron. On one hand, we see that Edmund is an illegitimate son. He's a bastard, which is not natural at all. And on the other hand, he's not being loyal nor natural in his way with his father. Shakespeare's strong writing style managed to conjure the opposition, the contradiction between Edmund and nature.
He also, Shakespeare does also the same thing. He uses the same stylistic device at the beginning of this passage on line 49 when Edgar is talking about, where Edmund is talking about Edgar by saying to his unnatural purpose. Again, he's using irony because in this fact, Edgar is in fact the natural boy, the natural son, but he's talking as if he was the unnatural one.
Readers should be surprised and shocked about how, with just a few lines, a few words, Edmund succeeded in twisting his father's vision about his true nature. He managed to flip it to an unnatural image of himself, which is someone worthy to rule.
And he not only changed the image of himself, but he also changed the image of his brother in the eyes of his father by changing him from natural to unnatural. Finally, in conclusion, we see that Shakespeare in this passage uses a lot addition and irony to destroy Edgar's image in the face of his father. More specifically, he does so by the choice of words and by using a long pause to emphasize the difference between the two brothers, and he also uses the irony to get him closer to his father, but at the same time separating his father from Edgar. Thanks.
Because there's a camera or not?
No, that's, we won't clap. Let's keep going.
Alright, so our extract was from scene 9, page 180, from line 1 to 40. From the abrupt ending of scene 8, after all of the characters have left the stage, we witness a change of scenery and mood. A raging storm comes, sending everything into chaos, and leaving nothing but the words of a washed-out king. Here, Lear, having been dismissed from his daughters, screams his rage upon the upcoming storm, and the fool stays behind to become, ironically, the voice of reason in the king's maddening terror. While analyzing the multiple themes and hidden messages of this extract, we will study and comment upon the use of nature-linked images to describe King Lear's emotions and regrets.
So while the storm motive is recurring in Shakespeare's theater, its signification is slightly different in each of his plays. So here in King Lear, the storm symbolizes King Lear's decaying mental state, but also the political and social instability of the kingdom, as well as the threat to the universe itself under the impact of ingratitude and treachery. In the opening lines of this excerpt, we witness King Lear's cursing at nature, asking it to be more ruthless and violent than usual, in order to bring greater destruction of the world by unleashing all of its fury. So, outraged by his daughter's actions and even more by their own ungratefulness, he wishes for the storm to break Mother Nature's reproductive womb, as described in lines 8 and 9, so that no more ungrateful men can be conceived. Throughout this passage, Lear invokes various elements of nature, such as wind, rain, cataracts, hurricanes, fire, lightning and thunder. And this accumulation of natural elements, taking place all at the same time in a very short passage, makes a great impression in the reader, and not only reveals the cocktail of emotions that constitutes Lear's state of mind, but it also symbolizes the many storms that are taking place at this point of the play. So there's Lear's interior conflict, the daughter's rejection against the father, the son's luster, and the kingdom's instability. And it also announces the storms that have yet to take place, such as the dispute between the sisters over Edmund and France's occupation in Britain. So as King Lear's cursing seems never ending, the fool tries to talk some sense into him, but his efforts are vain. In his first reply, he begs Lear to find refuge at one of his daughter's home. He claims that it's better to flatter them and to act nicely, since it would allow them to at least have a safe and dry place to be, rather than being outside under the rain. And he also tells him to ask for their blessing and forgiveness, since, unlike the storm, unlike them, the daughters, the storm is ruthless and it won't pity neither wise men or fools. And then Lear's next reply gives the impression that he didn't take into account the fool's intervention, but in reality he does actually take some elements to pursue his speech. He says that there's no reason for the storm to pity him or to be gentle towards him, because unlike his daughters, to whom he gave everything, like his kingdom, his love, and his affection, nature doesn't really owe anything to Lear. Like, it can be as ruthless as it wants towards him, but he wouldn't complain or blame it because he's not its master. And this scene is therefore especially important because it marks the beginning of Lear's realization that underneath their title clothing, all humans are equal and are subject to the force of nature equally.
So from lines 20 to 25, we see a gradation of the words poor, infirm, weak, and despised. And it's an affirmation by Lear where he is surrendering to the storm, as though he is surrendering to fate itself in his last attempt to redeem himself. This makes the reader feel some empathy for Lear, because we come to realize that he is human too, and that he does make mistakes. Afterwards, Shakespeare used the words servile ministers, and what they mean is that King Lear here admits to the storm and to nature that he is their servant. He is not capable of having a free will, and he is dead set upon the idea that justice doesn't even exist. Since his actions were good toward his daughters, they shouldn't have treated him this way, and if there was justice in nature, they wouldn't have treated him that way. Afterwards, we have your high engendered battles against the head. Here, engendered has a double meaning, so it's a double entendre. It both means a feeling or situation, and also to father an offspring, which makes sense in this extract. Here, King Lear presents to nature, and he says to nature, it is your fault, not mine, that my daughters are made this way, because you engendered them. They were made naturally, and thus, if they were mean to me, it's your fault. Afterwards, we can see that he is also blinded by his belief upon nature's participation in the betrayal of his daughters, and that he does not see the truth that's in front of him, such as that he is actually the only one to blame. We can make a link with Gloucester's blinding in scene 14, where Gloucester physically loses his sight, while King Lear lost his ability to see the truth. Afterwards, we have the Song of the Fool, and there is a sexual reference to a man's general, such as called peace. And it's a rude and witty way that Shakespeare used to insult King Lear by calling him a called peace because of his foolish actions. The fool helps King Lear understand that if he does not apologize to his daughters, he will end up, for his ill behavior, he will end up in the street covered in lice, just like a beggar. Such as, afterwards the fool says, so beggars marry many. That's another gender-related reference. And what we can see as people from the 21st century is that gender-related insults were deemed funny and humorous, but Shakespeare still had the power to shape his writing so that even a joke as crude as this one still helps the audience understand the differences and the gender injustices. Afterwards, the last line of his song says, for there was never yet fair woman, but she made mouths in a glass. And this is very interesting, since it's a direct link to the other manipulative daughters, such as Goneril and Regan, and their use of their advantage, their manipulation in the Love King. If you know you have the power to turn heads, you are conscious of your own power and you make mouths in a glass. This is what it means. Just as the two daughters used their persuasion to an extent to gain favors for the following. And their words were empty and vain with the Love King. King Lear also says afterwards in a reply, "No, I will be the pattern of all patience. I will say nothing." That's exactly what Cordelia said during the Love Game. And it shows that Cordelia is actually his daughter. Even if she didn't inherit his short temper, she did inherit his pride. And that may be why there was so much chaos into the play, because they are so honorable, they are so prideful.
So in conclusion, this extract constitutes a turning point in Lear's character development. Right before scene 9, the former king is rejected by his two daughters, and he's left all alone with his sadness and despair. He's trying therefore to find his place after leaving the throne and having been betrayed by his own family. The storm contributes to his realization that humans are all equal. He, just like everybody else, is subject to the destructive power of nature, which is always ruthless and pitiless. The episode is part of Lear's last hours of lucidity before slinking into madness. And in a way, King Lear also seems to wallow in self-pity through the intermediary of the storm and natural elements such as rain and thunder, thus making the reader feel empathetic towards him, but also suspicious about his real intentions. He blames his ill fate on the actions of nature without any regard to his own horrible actions, like banishing Kent and Cordelia. The literary devices used to demonstrate the comparison between the emotions of rage and sorrow that were felt by Lear and the motion of the storm helped the reader understand Lear's point of view by creating images such as the servile minister's expression. And finally, the fool serves as an intermediary between the audience and the play, like when he sings about the moral of the story and when he tries to put some sense into Lear. We can, through the fool's words, understand the real moral of the play, and it's such that one should not be so power-hungry as to destroy his own humanity, and that too much honor can bring chaos and irrationality into life.
Okay, so our extract was scene 14, line 26 to the end. And to put the listeners into context, this extract, So during this extract, King Lear has been driven out of his kingdom. His two daughters, Regan and Goneril, have slowly but surely taken the power of the kingdom. And right now, Gloucester, who has been betrayed by his bastard son Edmund, is imprisoned and is being tortured and interrogated by Regan, Cornwall, and other servants. And so in this scene, we'll be discussing nature themes, animal themes, and the obvious violence that this scene contains.
So firstly, as soon as Gloucester enters the room, he is brutally attacked by Regan and Cornwall, binds his arm to a chair like a common thief. So already his dignity is attacked and it breaks the laws of hospitality. And Regan goes even as far as to plug his beard, which is a grave insult and usually leads to duels. But Gloucester is obviously defenseless. She even goes so far as to add insult to injury by using an antithesis and a metonymy to say "so white and such a traitor." So she's talking about his beard. So despite his old age, he was unwise because he betrayed them. But it's also ironic because they are traitors and he is loyal.
And so Gloucester in this scene is the main character whose development is extremely interesting. As my colleague said, at the beginning he's trying to be nice when he calls them my friends. He said that they are in his castle. However, in the long paragraph on page 208, line 53 to 62, Gloucester clearly states his position in this entire conflict. Firstly, when he says, "The sea with such a storm as his bowed head in the hell black night endured would have boiled up and quenched the stealth fires." And so, firstly, this metaphor is also an antithesis in the sense that it echoes the storm that describes King Lear's chaotic mental state. It's an antithesis in the sense that in this case, Gloucester talks about the sea as an element of purification. He says that the water will rise and will quench the stealth fires. The stealth fires being the ambitions, the narcissistic ambitions of Cornwall, Regan, and their husbands seeking power. And so in this case, this water purification could also be an allusion to baptism, a Catholic ritual which was deemed to introduce newborns into the Catholic Church. And furthermore, after that he says in the hyperbole, all cruels, all subscribe, but I shall see the wicked vengeance overtakes his children. And so obviously he's saying that he'll be tortured, he'll take the pain in order to see justice prevail. He wants the king to take back his rightful place, and he wants the traitors to be punished.
A little further in the scene, line 66, Gloucester says that he that will think to live till he behold, give me some help. So this is very appealing to the audience because everyone is going to age, become old and weak, and you don't want the young to take advantage of that. It's also related to the rest of the play, as King Lear is abused by his own daughters. So the audience should already be outraged by the torture, but now it's even more because he's directly talking to them. Yeah, so.
And so, in spite of all this torture and unjustified treatment, violence is still mitigated by a certain humanity in the sense that one of the servants does stand up to his master, Cornwall, in order to protect Gloucester. Indeed, when he says, "What better service have I never done than now to bid you hold?" And so, although a servant's responsibilities is to obey his master, in this case he feels that he would not be obeying, he would not be searching for he would not be the loyal subject he is if he did not stop his master from completing this cruel and harmful act. And in response, Cornwall says, "My villain." And so instead of recognizing maybe that he did something wrong, he calls him a villain, which is an allusion to the beginning of the play, in which King Lear is banishing Cordelia, and Kent steps up to in fact, to protect Cordelia, and King Lear also calls him a villain. Because indeed, the word villain comes up over 40 times in this entire play.
Really? Did you Googled it? Villain
I
40
Googled it,
times?
yeah. Furthermore, we see that the other servants, so while this happens, the servant realizes his master will not change his mind, so a duel happens, and the servant harms Cornwall, and and Regan orders the other servants to intervene to help, and we see that their unwillingness to intervene shows also their position in this entire conflict. So Regan is forced to grab the sword herself and backstab him, this backstabbing also representing her betrayal in the entire play. And the servant dies, but loyalty does seem to be highlighted in this death.
Obviously angered by this servant's reaction, Cornwall will pluck out the other eye of Gloucester, but as he does so, he calls it a vile jelly, which is a metaphor to say that he is more disgusted about the eye of Gloucester than by his own action, showing that he's not even realizing how evil he is. He also asks Gloucester a rhetorical question: where is the luster now? So where is your pride? Where is your dignity? But it's, as always, ironical, because Cornwall is the one with no dignity in that scene. A little after that, line 85, Regan reveals the truth about Edmund's betrayal to Gloucester, just to hurt him even more, and she uses an antithesis, saying that Edmund, who is too good to pity thee, so too good to pity Gloucester. So it's an antithesis because goodness is having pity for others. So just with those two lines, we can clearly see that Cornwall and Regan are sadistic and completely mad. So the audience should start to feel hatred towards them. And we also see that Gloucester, now despite being blind, can now clearly see in the metaphorical sense. So he gains insight as a reward for his sufferings. So now he is able to reconcile with Edgar because he knows he didn't betray them. There's also social critique that is spread out throughout the play. So if you see a blind beggar like Gloucester, maybe he was once an earl, and maybe he is more virtuous than you think. And it's also shown by other characters like Edgar disguising as a portal.
Furthermore, other literacy devices that Shakespeare used to describe certain characters in this play is zoomorphism, which is to attribute animal characteristics to humans. And we can see that the first line of this play, of this scene, where Regan calls Gloucester an ungrateful fox. In this case, a fox is often associated with being cunning and manipulative. Furthermore, we see that Regan calls the servant who steps up for Gloucester, calls him a dog. In this case, a dog is not the loyal and trustworthy companion today, but more of a dirty and street animal that is frowned upon. And furthermore, this reference to a dog is again highlighted when when Regan tells the servant to let Gloucester out of the gate and let him smell his way to Dover. So she's comparing him to a dirty animal who has to rely on his sense of smell to guide himself. And it's also an allusion to his blindness, which happened right before.
So after Regan and Cromwell left...
Concluding?
Yeah, it's concluding. So after they left the scene, there's a servant that says, "I will never care what wickedness I do if this man comes to good." So he will do anything to avenge Gloucester. And this can pretty much sum up the scene, because with this message he conveys to the audience that you need to be determined to do justice at any cost. So it's also justifying the action of Edgar and Kent, who are disguising and scheming in the shadows to take over the kingdom and bring justice. So yeah, in the scene we really see that Gloucester is loyal and brave until the end, and even the loss of his sight is rewarded by insight, while Cornwall and Regan are clearly shown to be antagonists and despicable people. And while Cornwall is judged in the scene and bleds out, it's clear, there's a clear foreshadowing that Regan will meet an even worse fate.
Alright, so our excerpt is from Shakespeare's King Lear's last scene, so scene number 24, and covers lines 234 to 282 inclusively. So it starts off when the bodies of Goneril and Regan are brought in, and just to place the excerpt in context, we know that earlier on, Goneril kills her sister by jealousy and then commits suicide. So what's specific to this excerpt is that the events seem to happen very fast, as if and we really see the kingdom crumbling down. It also can be seen as split in two parts, the first focusing on Edmund's character and the second on Lear's. And both these parts reveal the true nature of these characters. So Edmund still being the villain he is, Lear still being in his state of folly, as well as Kent and Edgar still being those good-hearted characters.
So first of all, let's talk about Edmund's character. In this scene, we see two aspects of two of his actions reveal his evil nature. The first action is the first line when he says, "Yet Edmund was beloved, the one the other poisoned for my sake, and after slew herself." So here, Edmund thinks of what the sisters did as an act of love. But here we can understand that Edmund's inability to understand the virtuous feeling of love is revealing actually his true nature and his evil character. So it is obvious to us, the readers, that the love professed by the two sisters towards Edmund is actually false and corrupted, and that to think that Edmund believes that this is love just shows how evil and corrupted he is as well. We understand that this is not love because Shakespeare has, through his characterization of Goneril and Regan throughout the play, as individuals who killed each other, tried to kill each other without even a remorse, not even feeling remorse, is just the proof that they are unable to love anyone because of their selfishness. And from our context, having seen these two sisters and their actions, and comparing them to our 21st century set of values and norms, we know that Edmund is actually very wrong to believe that this is love, and then if he does so, it's because this is what he shows towards his brother Edgar and then towards his father as well. The other action that reveals Edmund's true evil nature is in the following. So when he tries to save King Lear and Cordelia. So to understand his intentions, we have to put these actions into context. So in this scene, Edmund is close to death. He's in agony and he has lost his most powerful and loyal protectors, Regan and Goneril. So in this moment, he's put into a corner and he has nothing to lose more. He is just deciding to restore his image by saving Cordelia and Lear. But it is to be understood, once again, that Shakespeare, through his characterization of Edmund throughout the play, wants us to understand that Edmund, once again, has taken his decision from selfish intentions, and that Edmund only acts if he is to gain power, recognition, or wealth. So as Edmund's evil character is revealed in his full extent, and as Lear's madness is fully presented, this part will be covered by Kenan later on. The good-natured characters are shocked at the situation. So for instance, later at page 270, at the last line, Kent says, "Is this the promised end?" So this interrogative form just shows a shocked tone, and this is extremely important to understand Kent's character, because he is such a loyal and good-natured person who discusses death and injustice, is extremely shocked by these brutal events. Edgar is in the same sense doing the same thing when he says, "or image of that horror." So once again, we use this interrogative form, which highlights the shocked tone, but also there's an evident negative connotation to his words. And the idea of comparing these actions and these horrors and these injustices to the end of the world just shows how they are panicked and they do not understand the evilness and the mean character of Edmund in this situation. So it's certain that from their perspective, being good-natured and pure-hearted, Edgar and Kent are shocked, and they see the situation as becoming uncontrollable and frightening. However, from the context of the public, from our context, the 21st century readers, and also the 1700s public, this is expected because Shakespeare is to follow the conventions of a tragedy in which the end is often very fast-paced and brutal, so it is expected from us.
So now for the second part, which starts mainly around lines 255. So we see that King Lear enters with Queen Cordelia in his arms. And his first reply is, how, oh, you are men of stones. So this very lyrical cry is described by, first of all, the repetition of the how, and also the use of the o. So this lyricism of his cry allows the reader to feel compassionate towards Lear, no matter the context. So even nowadays, we can feel this compassion. And he later on says that she's gone forever. I know when one is dead and one lives. So this seems to show that Lear is conscious of the state of his daughter, who is deceased, but in fact he's in denial, because right after that, he tries to attempt twice to find a little sign of life in his daughter. So right after he says that he sees that she's dead, he uses the analogy, she's dead as earth. This is very contradictory, because just as earth may seem dead, like without life, it is actually filled with life. When you think about earth in its nature, his first attempt is then to say, lend me a looking glass. If that her breath will mist or stay in the stone, why then she lives? So this is at line 257. And seeing this fails, because her breath does not come up on the stone, he tries again with a feather at line 261. He says, this feather stirs, she lives. So basically this was, if this feather stirs, she would be alive. So we see that he says himself that he knows she's dead, yet he's still attempting to find a little sign of life in his daughter. And as Safia said, we see the compassion that the other characters are trying to show to Lear. So we have Kent with his question about, is this world's end? We also have Edgar. And then later on, Kent tries to show to Lear that he is present with him. He tells him, "Oh, my good master, this noble Kent, your friend." But Lear, once he failed both attempts to find life, really isolates himself in his grieving and his sorrow. And he curses them all. He says, "A plague upon you, murder straight as all." So this is the first aspect of his isolation. He tries to curse them all out. Then he's going to go blame himself. So he says, "I might have saved her, now she's gone forever." So this feeling of guilt is seen in this, and he tries to bring her back to life. He says, "Cordelia, Cordelia, stay a little." He's still trying to ask questions. He's talking to a deceased corpse. And finally, we see that he's thinking of so many things at the same time, which comes back to his folly. So he says, he starts reminiscing about his daughter's characteristics. He says, her voice was ever soft, gentle and low, an excellent thing in woman, line 269. And then he quickly shifts his expression, and there's even a dash to show that there's a shift. He says, "I killed a slave that was a hanging thee." So this goes from his soft description of his daughter to suddenly speaking about a murder he committed. And this shows that he has many things happening on his mind. And that he's in disbelief with what he's done. So just as we've seen, he isolates himself from the other characters, cursing them and all. But then he reconsiders them. He asks Kent at line 273, "Who are you? Mine eyes are not all the best, I'll tell you straight." So when he says that my eyes are not all the best, this can be associated to Lear's age, but even more importantly, it can be associated to his blindness to the truth. So this echoes Gloucester's blinding, because although Gloucester is the only character that is physically blind, many characters, especially Lear, are blind to see the truth, and this has been seen with the theme of blindness throughout the entire play. And then Kent, once again, answers Lear, and he says, he's trying to identify and to reveal Caius's person. So he says, "Where's your servant Caius?" And Lear believes that Caius is dead. He says he's dead and rotten. Then Kent finally responds, "No, my good lord, I'm the very man." So we really see that Kent has a little bit of a poor timing in this this desire to identify the identity of Caius. He's trying to show to Lear that he's been along him the whole time. Yet Lear responds, "I'll see that straight." If you go see the endnotes for "I'll see that straight," it can be said as "look into that in a moment." So Lear, although he's physically listening to Kent, who's present, he's still thinking about Cordelia, and he's still isolated in a way, because no matter Kent's desire to identify Caius' identity, he's still thinking over the dead body of his daughter. And so with this lyric exchange, we see that Lear is still in his folly, and he's still in denial, facing his daughter's death.
So to conclude, Shakespeare here tries to wrap up the whole play by presenting the character's true nature as their fullest, as its fullest, in a very fast-paced way. So indeed, Lear's craziness, evidenced by his lack of rationality and lyrical tone, and then Edmund's evilness that is proved by his inability to understand the virtuous aspect of love, and also his selfish intentions, and finally Kent and Edgar's pure-hearted nature that is shown by their disgust of the situation and their attempt to comfort. Here helps to understand, as they learn to understand once again the whole idea of the play. So the readers come to realize that the characters are very coherent and linear in their personalities, and that Shakespeare has painted a very Manichaean, or in other words, polarized world in this play. So, moreover, the events are presented in an extremely fast pace, and this is typical of the tragedy genre, but it is
however, to state that Shakespeare goes against many other conventions in King Lear, namely the incorporation of the high and low vocabulary.
Good. Free for all, go!
So you said that
I like the.
you said that Edmund was truly evil because he saw an act of love in the mutual merger of the two sisters. But could we not see this as like a way he always wanted the love of his father, and now he gets like proof that he was loved by some people?
Well,
And
well, how I interpreted it is that he sees in the two sisters' act a proof of love, right? So I feel like this is what he defines love as, this idea of a selfish, cruel act which can be used even if it's justified. It justifies violence. It justifies anything. And it's vile. And this idea, just thinking that Edmund believes that this is true love, and that he is beloved because of it, it just shows that if he has to express this kind of feeling, maybe that's why he acted this way against with his father and Edgar, just because he loved himself so much that he decided to kill other people. I believe that this idea, I feel like love is presented from Cordelia's perspective and from Edgar's perspective as such a virtuous feeling of like selfishness. It's just this compares this opposition of the two of them. Just shows that Edmund probably it just shows that he has a vile nature. This idea is wrong. Yeah.
right to respond.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like, so he sees the proof of love of the two sisters, but afterwards you see that he tries to save Cordelia. He tells that, oh, I sent the captain to try to hang her, and at this point he has no reason to do so.
Well,
But once you, my theory, okay, it's just a theory, is once he received through love, he's like, okay, I was loved, I don't need to be this vile all the time, and now I can maybe try to find redemption.
Well, I feel like Shakespeare defines true love by showing Cordelia and Edgar's perception of true love. So, and then the negative idea of love is shown by Regan, Goneril, and then Edmund. And then Edmund here is not acting as a way of selflessness or out of love, in my sense. When he tries to save Cordelia and Lear, it's just that he has nothing to lose anymore. He's about to die. He has lost all of his allies, and he's doomed. He's in a corner. And if he doesn't do anything, it's not going to change anything. He's just trying to restore his image. Like, I feel like just the idea that Shakespeare's characters are very linear and coherent. It's just the whole characterization of Edmund throughout the play just shows that this act was actually an act of selfishness.
And the first time that we read it, it really shows that he's trying to bring out the good in him. But then again, it's another manipulation. It's a manipulation tactic. And you guys covered it a lot about how by his language, by his exactly the way he's going to express his feelings to his father and everything, with the pauses and everything, the diction, he's manipulating. So initially, as I said, we see that he's trying to shed this and to bring out the good, but in the end, it's still his nature. And his true lights, his true colors are shed in this passage.
Yeah, okay.
I have a question for you guys.
Yes.
So, does the bond that Edmund had with his father? Oh, okay, sorry. Does the bond that Edmund had with his father, even if it's not natural, is it a strong bond?
Well, he managed to make it a strong bond. Because, well, at first we see that Gloucester still respects his bastard son when he's talking, I think, with a servant or someone else. Well, he still respects his son. We don't get any feeling of favoritism towards either of them, but I feel that it was just in Edmund's nature to be a villain. He was just, I don't know why, but he seems to be born that way, you know, to want power, to not destroy what he's supposed to love, but we just get to feel that is the only thing he knows. And although he could have had a strong bond with his father while being the bastard son, well, he kind of lost that chance for because of his taste for power.
If I might add, I don't think that it was a strong bond because I find that Gloucester didn't have a strong bond between both of them, and during that our passage that we analyzed, we see that the bond that he has with both of them is not strong or for example, or weak, but it's very confusing for him. And I think this foreshadows what happens at the end, how he dies by confusion, by not knowing, by being so confused, torn between both of them and both of that bond. So I find that it's not a very strong bond that he has.
Did we say that the bond that Gloucester has with Edmund is stronger than the one with Edgar because
I was going to stop
yeah,
that,
okay,
but
perfect.
I'd say yes.
Okay.
Because, well, basically because
Well, at
he
what
lost.
time? At what time?
At the beginning.
Oh,
Yeah, you're saying.
keep it.
Yeah, no, but
You could add.
I'd say yes because Gloucester lost trust in Edgar pretty fast. Edgar never spoke to Gloucester between all that chaos, and he just believed what Edmund said. Yeah.
But as you said, like, I mean, Edmund had a really well-prepared plan. Like, he was manipulating him by his speech, but also, like, the first time he had a letter. So he had a written letter, and yes, his father did not know the writing of Edgar, which is kind of weird. But Edmund assured him that it was Edgar's writing style. So there is a proof for
Yeah,
it.
and he also even says loyal and natural boy while talking to Edmund. It shows how he just forgot about Edgar and like the strong bond is between him and his son, his bastard son, and his son.
But if I may, at the beginning, I really believe that he loved both of his sons equally, because just at scene 1, page 100, he says, yet is like he talks about Edgar, and he said, yet who yet is no dearer than in my account. So he says that both of them are loved equally. It's just the idea that for him to believe that Edmund would put such effort to betray his whole family, it was shocking and was not even thinkable. So it's just that Edmund is very good at manipulating.
Yet right after he makes fun of not makes fun, he compares him having Edmund to a good sport and saying that. And don't you think that's kind of like,
Contradictory.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he also then says he sent him out for 9 years, and then says, "And away he shall again." So, do you think that him saying he loves them both is maybe him just trying to convince himself that is, or that
So if you're loyal, maybe if you're as a good father should.
Edmund was right there,
Because
so he heard everything.
But what's really funny is that it seems as though, like, he doesn't speak to Edgar after he knows that Edgar wrote this so-called letter. He doesn't speak to him. He doesn't, like, want to know if it's real or not. It's like this letter is a proof that his son would, in a way, betray him. But even like what you said with Edmund, what's weird is it seems like Gloucester doesn't have a good relationship with either of his sons. He believes the second Edmund comes up with a letter, and at the end, when Edmund shifts, and then he's like, "Oh, I never saw this coming." Well, he doesn't have a good relationship with either of them, so he doesn't know them.
And that's why it's really interesting that all characters have a double nature in the sense that they may appear to be virtuous, but they all have that second nature, that second dark part of themselves. And it's the same thing for Lear. At the end, we see he's loving, he's mourning Cordelia. It's very hypocritical. He says he could have saved her, but it's not even saving in this case because he's the one who condemned her to this, her fate. So like, he's trying to excuse himself, and then he blames the others, and then so it's kind of mixed feelings.
it's still very indirect. Like, he condemned her by his first action, but it's still very indirect. He's not direct cause of this. It's more culpability, but I mean, you say like he's the one that chose her fate, but it's not that much the case. I mean,
maybe what he was saying, maybe he wants to clear his conscience because in a way, like you said, he has a sense of culpability and wants.
yeah, but it's not real.
I mean, I know it's
Yeah, but you
it's at the
cannot.
beginning, at the end, but at the same time, his blindness is what caused all of this.
Yeah. Okay. But also to get back to the team, so maybe Gloucester is loving more Edgar than Edmund. I think that's what everyone said. But we also have the same thing with King Lear loving more Cordelia than the other daughters. And also the same idea of like a distance between the parents and the children, because he's not even realizing that Colonel and Regan are just...
Yeah, well, he brought it up a little. The two unhappy families kind of have a parallel, similar story toward the end, from the beginning to the end.
Near as well as I think it was me that says they would switch Gloucester would switch very fast. Lear as well as he was gave all the kingdom to his two daughters, but then as soon as he saw that they weren't being very popular and everything, he switched directly to Cordelia.
And don't forget that the bond is still strong, because although like we say that we're talking about Gloucester houses his bond with Edgar, or Lear houses bond with Cordelia, the bond, even though it doesn't seem too strong, because we see this distance between them, don't forget that these children, like Edgar and Cordelia, both still love their father no matter what. So Cordelia, it's as if nothing ever happened. She's willing to accept her father no matter what, no matter his folly, even though the doctor intervenes, tells her about this condition and everything. And Edgar is even willing to keep on hiding his identity. He doesn't want to buy himself back to his father or whatever. He just wants to act by kindness and by love to his father, and the same way as Cordelia.
But do you think Cordelia didn't have anything against him because he became crazy? I found that if he came with his senses and just said, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake," I think he would put it more on the face and said, "No, I don't deserve to accept
Yeah,
mistakes
but
and everything."
at
Because he was
one
so.
point, you can't just like, what if this, what
Yeah,
if
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
It's very, it's
yeah.
very much my
It's really like, I always say that to myself when I watch movies or read books. Like, the author obviously had an intention. This brings me to my next question is, you talked about 21st century values. Do you think it's wrong to have those values when we analyze this play? Are we over-interpreting certain things? Do you think Shakespeare actually foresaw centuries later, like all?
we still have the same.
I feel like what makes something a classic is that it's interpretable in a sense.
Exactly.
So the idea that we read it and we understand it and we can judge from our set of values, it's just the making the book evolving with ourselves and with humanity.
And so Shakespeare foresaw that?
Well,
Well,
no,
maybe
That's the power of that,
Maybe.
of that play, because he might have not have foresaw it, but it still happened.
But I'm just saying
We're
we're
100 years later.
judging many of the characters extremely harshly, but however we're not necessarily, we're kind of biased in the sense that we're not taking into account that the conventions and norms.
Yeah, there were
Okay,
different
but
at the time.
I agree with you, Nicholas. Like on some values, we need to be more open. But I mean, the guy betrayed his own family. He saw like two sisters kill each other for his love, and he's like, "Oh, sweet."
I know, but
It's not pretty good. I mean, the guy is pretty vile on any type of standards.
I know, but those types of actions like banishments and executions were all kind of like normal. I mean, today the death chair is even a really dilemma that we're having. Back then, you would behead people on the spot if they just disrespected the king.
Yeah, but they're banishing like really powerful people. Like he's banishing Kent like this, but it's still an honor.
Really
Like the guy has
You're the
warriors.
king.
Yeah, but even you're not supposed to be so like I don't know harsh.
Cavalier.
Yeah, you're not supposed to go all the way out in an instant. The guy is just protesting one of your orders.
And so that's
And
maybe
you banishing.
something Shakespeare is trying to point out. Like,
Well,
Yeah.
okay, if I may, what that is all those elements are there because it's theater, it's drama. So
Tragedy.
there are people sitting in there who are looking for a show. So why is this? That's what they're doing. They're doing exactly what you're doing. Why did he kick him out? He's just saying, "Yo, listen to your daughter."
Yo.
Exactly. Good.
Make sure to subscribe. I'm sorry.